Good morning. Can everybody hear me? Can everybody hear me well? Well, good morning. Real quick, I'll just be giving a real fast introduction because I want to have a productive use of our time here in Anderson Hall with Otis. We've got Becky and Taylor here today from Otis. Thank you for being here. We're going to have a very brief presentation, a little bit about our elevators, as we know that's why we're here, right? Elevators? Okay. Well, they're going to give a brief presentation just about overall elevators and what they've inherited when they partnered here at Horizon House with us. Right? We can only go up from here. But anyways, that is a very real reality we want to talk about, is because Otis has been a great partner, but they did inherit some stuff with us, and they've made the investment to be a good partner with us, just like we've made an investment with them to be a good steward of their services. So real quick, for those that aren't here, I've had a lot of questions. I know there might be some folks watching. This is going to be recorded. If you wanted to revisit anything discussed today, there'll be a brief presentation, and then we have a large amount of time dedicated to question and answers. So we'll be running microphones to you for any questions that you might have. But I would like to hand the floor over now to Becky and Taylor.
Thank you, Horizon House, for having me. I just wanted to give you a brief overview of Otis here in Seattle. Horizon House came to us a year and a half ago, approximately, to partner with them from your previous maintenance company. And like he said, it was, yes? Sure. Here, let me move that. Is that better? Yes. Perfect. All right. Sorry, I'm not used to using the microphone. So as I mentioned, or as Brian mentioned, Otis and Horizon House became partners here a couple of years ago. And with working with their facilities team and directors, we put together some plans to improve the reliability. We did, or you have suffered with some lengthy shutdowns, some of them based on improvements that they have invested in your systems. But to start this presentation off, I want to tell you a little bit about Otis and our local organization. I am your primary account manager, but we have a large, what we call a large general office here in the Seattle, which is supported by a general manager, regional field ops, a regional sales manager, supervisor, maintenance supervisor that is in charge of the actual mechanics that take care of your equipment. Myself is the primary account manager, and Taylor Martin, who is my repair specialist. So anything outside of the normal scope of your maintenance contract, upgrades, considerations, Taylor works with me and the Horizon team to put that in front of the organization. Local support from our actual field mechanics. We have a team of 2 that support primarily Horizon House on the day-to-day maintenance. Mark and, whoopsie, I thought I bumped that, excuse me. Mark and Taylor work together, Taylor Ford, supporting the day-to-day maintenance. And then we have 2 technical support specialists, Marty and Leo, who also step in if there's a situation that is challenging for one or the other to work with. Our experience, I won't dive into this in gross detail, but we take care of all sorts of equipment, right? It's not just Otis equipment. You have a mix of Otis and foreign equipment. So we have strategic players and regional support with engineers and teams that are specifically designed to support your equipment. Regional field engineers and online support engineers that our technicians can reach out to in addition to local support if they're running into situations that are more challenging than the rest. And also our network. Our field mechanics, we have a significant crew here in Seattle. We have over 240 field mechanics between our new equipment, service, and modernization division. And with that comes a lot of knowledge and a lot of technical support that we can fall back on and rely on. And then we have a social network. This day and age now, we use what we call Yammer. So if a mechanic is in a situation where he needs a part that's maybe difficult to find, we can reach out to anyone across the company worldwide for that support via technology. So this is a little education in, I call it Elevators 101. I don't know how many of you are really familiar on how an elevator works. If this is old news, we can move quickly through this. But the units here at Horizon House are what we consider traction elevators, meaning they're not hydraulic. So the component system for a traction elevator is made up of basically three main components. You've got the drive mechanism and shivs upstairs in your control room. You've got a hoist system, which is steel belts, and then a counterweight system that you're actually pulling your elevator rather than pushing it up and down the hoistway. So with this system, you have the car, the actual elevator itself that you ride in, that goes up and down the hoistway, and at each level, you have a set of doors, and the car has a set of doors. Well, believe it or not, you have two components of your system that takes the biggest wear and tear. It's the motor itself, that anytime you push a button, it's got to start and respond. But more importantly, when it gets to that floor, your doors open and close every time, hundreds of thousands of times a day, as you can imagine. So with that in consideration, it wears, those components wear at a greater rate than some of your other components. Moving into this project, Otis surveyed all of the equipment and identified some of the key components that had been worn over time or maybe not quite properly maintained from a previous vendor or contractor. And so we worked with them and put together a proposal of all of the things that would enhance some reliability. And so they made the investment, as you can see, on a significant amount of components on elevators 1 and 2. I won't read through all of these. If anyone has a question, certainly raise your hand and I'll be free to, you can interrupt my presentation. Elevator 3, elevator 4 and 5, elevator 8, elevator 10. 6 and 7, as most of you know, are going to be demolished here shortly when they get ready to build that new tower for the future modernization. Also, they've been planning on elevators 1 through 5. I'm not sure if that impacts all of you or if there's just certain residents that's strongly affected by that. But that will be a full, complete modernization of the system. And a little different than the traction system that is roped. I'm going to go in and show you a future modernization and the differences with technology. And the Gen 3 is what we're looking at for elevators 1 and 5. And the primary difference between a traditional traction elevator and our new Gen 3 mod is that you no longer use steel ropes. They're a belted system where the actual wires are within a polyurethane coat, which makes the system much more reliable. The ropes or the belts are more flexible, giving an ability to have them bend and flex over the drive sheave a plethora more times than a traditional steel rope. Some of the other things that you've seen is door protection, and I'm sure there will be some questions that come up during the Q&A section of this presentation. But the door protection that we use now is an infrared technology. So when that door protection device is mounted on your car door, if you interrupt that matrix of LED signals, the transmitters and emitters, the doors will reopen without contact. The primary concern with a lot of individuals is that they'll say, well, I touched the door, but it didn't reopen or reverse. It's actually mounted on the car door, so the hoistway door is not protected. You have to break the barrier or the screen to the car door. So reaching in to the car door will break that matrix and not just the hoistway door. So it's one of the biggest complaints typically in a senior housing or a medical facility, that we don't want anyone knocked down by the doors. So if we need to go into a greater detail in education, maybe at a future time I can do maybe a film presentation for Horizon House to show how that operates. Okay, so the part that you've been waiting for. We're going to bribe you with a quick treat to sweeten the blows, because I'm sure a lot of you have some serious frustrations.
Quick question.
Sure.
In the previous slide, elevator number 11 is not listed.
Well,
And it's currently out of
it is currently out of service. So we can talk. Elevator 11 didn't require these upgrades. Right now, it's a technical adjustment of the machine balancing that's going to be going on with elevator 11. Taylor Ford is actually on site today. We are engaged with our repair department. We have to actually bring in 5,000 pounds of test weights to put on that elevator to calibrate it. So we are hoping, knock on wood today, that that will transpire by the end of the day. So you've dealt with an inconvenience. Unfortunately, the timing was getting that repair crew up here with the actual test weights. So hopefully, end of today or tomorrow at the latest, we should have an elevator back up and running, which is impactful. We know that when 10 and 11, Taylor knows when we get a call, we need to respond quickly. It's unfortunate, the system, with 2 elevators in a tower, one down, it's going to delay response. One down out of service, I know is going to delay the response for all of you to suffer through until we can get it up and running. We work as quickly as possible, like I said, either with Taylor or if we have to engage a repair crew to assist with him. So that's why 11 wasn't on there. Sure.
Do you have an idea how this all works from the point of view of the residents? So can you explain to me your understanding of the problems for residents that occur? Please.
Well, generally, the problems for residents is the wait times, typically. And if you have one elevator, and if there's any ambulatory issues, you can't, a lot of people, it's not safe to walk up a stairway, right? So maybe with an assistant, you can manage it, but no, we understand those challenges, and Horizon House is very familiar with that as well. I wish that we could commit and say to you that we will keep your elevators running 100% of the time. It's not possible. I wish I had a crystal ball to tell you when they eventually break. We try with the investment from Horizon House. We've built a maintenance program to hopefully proactively and predictively see what is necessitated on each of these elevators, hence why we made that initial investment to get them brought up to a more reliable status.
So your understanding of the problem from our end is elevators are slower, true, and that there are ambulatory issues that sometimes mess things up. But I'd like to go into that a little because I'm feeling not safe when I'm on an elevator with a cleaning cart, 2 walkers, and lots of buttons, and we're not supposed to hold it open. It's sort of an impossible situation. And I just wonder if there's any ideas you have about how to deal with that.
So let's talk about how safe an elevator is. Believe it or not, this is a statistic. Elevators are the safest transportation in the world. The only time that there's a incident, it's usually involving the doors. Elevators don't fall. They're counterweight, designed with a counterweight that, in worst case scenario, the elevator would go up versus down because of the counterweight design of a traction elevator.
I don't mean safe in that sense.
Okay, what do you?
I'm sure that nobody anywhere in this room or beyond would ever tolerate real safety issues. I'm saying as residents, there's a shakiness, there are jam-ups, there are a number of things that make me feel, not for my life, but it just doesn't feel like it's going to work, and we all might get stuck in here. Yeah. And do you have anything that can respond to that?
So I'll tell you, with the newer generation of elevators, there is a smoother consistency to the ride because of the design, the improvements over time. The actual sheave diameters, the belts create a smoother ride. What we have to manage when let's take, for instance, the 22 stories and the tower. You have rails on both your car and your counterweight. That elevator, the portion that you ride in, we call it the car, it's riding on those guide rails. And there's roller guides mounted on the top and the bottom of those to help smooth out the ride. But a building changes over time, right? So it's almost impossible to get that perfectly smooth ride without a little bit of bump. And I know it may be unnerving. I think most importantly, you have to have the confidence that even though there is a bit of a bump or a shake, that has nothing to do with the reliability of the system. It's nature of the beast, of just the age of the elevator and the building itself.
I'd like to address 2 of the issues that you've alluded to. One has to do with confusion over the instructions that we have gotten not to keep the door open by any means other than pressing the open button that is within the elevator. That has been interpreted by many of us to mean we should not put our hand in when the door is closing to make it open again. But I think you have said that that's all right.
So technically, with an infrared system, if the elevator doors are partially closing, if they've reached 3/4 close, don't stick your arm in there. But if the doors are just starting to close, you can absolutely reach in and touch. You have to be careful, mind you, though, because like I said, the detector itself is not mounted on that outside door. We call it the hoistway door. So from where you're standing in the lobby, the door protection is on that inside car door. So if you miss that, I'm sure we don't want anyone hurt, right? And depending on each individual's mobility, someone may get knocked over if the actual hoistway door hits them and closes on them. We are working with Horizon House now to extend door times. It's under discussion, to your point of using the door open button if you're inside the car. But
if you're not inside.
But if you're not inside, if you're standing on the lobby side, this isn't going to do anything. In fact, it can hinder overall service. When you start slowing anything down or having individuals use the door open button, it's going to impact the response times. So it's that slippery slope.
Okay. Now, the other point that you alluded to, you said that the elevators do not fall down.
True.
But I was told by a resident who was in an elevator that indeed it did fall several flights down, and I would like to know if that is true or if she was merely stuck in and didn't realize it.
So elevators, the sensation of falling, most times that occurs when an elevator goes into a zoning mode or someone has mismanaged or maybe missed where the direction of the elevator's going. So let's say the elevator is going in the down direction and someone gets on at their lobby and didn't realize they were going to go down instead of up. All of a sudden they push a button, they think they're going to go up to the 21st floor, elevator's going to go down to the direction of travel that it was originally assigned to. So that can give that sensation. The other thing that can give you that sensation of falling is if the elevator, a button isn't pushed, they go in, they may be distracted, talking with somebody, and all of a sudden that elevator is going to go respond to a call. Again, it will take you off guard. It will give you that sensation of you're falling. I've been with Otis 43 years. There's been very few falls or elevators that have fallen, and it has never been on a traction elevator. It's been on a hydraulic where they've lost oil pressure. Elevators are designed, Elijah Graves Otis, who invented the safety device, is the reason we have elevators at all. Because an elevator, if it starts going into a falling state and it exceeds speed, motion, direction, whatever, those safeties will set. So, and once they set, the elevator isn't going anywhere. It's going to grab onto the rails, and until a mechanic comes to release you, you're going to be safe. So I don't know the situation that occurred with your friend, but rest assured, unless it's some catastrophic event like 9/11 in New York City, your elevators aren't going to fall.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I moved into the North Tower in 2007, 17 years ago, almost at the beginning of the opening of the tower. And there are 2 Otis elevators in that tower. Within a very short time, I would say within the first month or couple of months, we began having trouble with what is now elevator 10. So it has never worked appropriately to my mind. I'm wondering, Otis, these are Otis elevators. Does Otis have a variety of quality of elevators? Obviously, there are some that are more expensive than others, but I just don't understand why, never have, why within 1 or 2 months that elevator had problems.
Unfortunately, I can't go back 17 years. I wish I had the technology or the records for that. But to answer your question on different qualities, no, we do not have different qualities. Otis is the leader in the industry with the most foremost technology, and our record of safety is at the top of the industry. If there was a reliability issue, an elevator can be installed, and if it's not maintained properly, that's usually the cause. Yeah. No, and yeah, no, I don't know. And I wish I could speak to whatever that circumstance was, but a lot of times it doesn't matter if it's like a brand new car, it still has to be maintained. And if a maintenance company maybe isn't doing the job that they should be doing, you're going to have failures.
First of all, I want to express my profound gratitude that Horizon House has switched to the Otis Company from the former blah blahs. So my question...
Another chocolate to the person in the...
I don't do chocolate. I'll give it to her.
I'm teasing you.
Anyway, I think you said my issue might be being addressed, and that is the time that the door remains open. I'm referring now to elevator number 1, and I have had several experiences. For example, when I'm bringing a package up from the package room, and it's too heavy for me to hold for 18 floors, and so I set it down. And then when it gets to my 18th floor, I pick it up, and I start walking, and the elevator hits me in the arm between the elbow and the shoulder. And just a few days ago, I had an experience of observing the number 1 elevator, and a gentleman got on with a walker. Took him a little bit to get in there and get situated, and then a woman started to get on behind him, plenty of room, but the elevator also closed on her forearms. So I think you said you were going to address the time that the elevator doors remain open?
Yes.
Okay, good. And then
I'd like to go look at elevator 1, 2 today.
Sure.
After that. Just
Please do,
curious.
yeah.
Thank you.
I think that's it for now.
I want to second what Ruth just said. They all close too quickly because you're dealing with people who aren't quick anymore, you know. No. and people, you know, are sticking. Okay, so I want to clarify how we should keep the door open, because the instructions we've gotten have been contradictory to what you are telling us today. We were told, don't put your arm in because that will mess up the communication system of the elevator, and then they won't work properly, and that's what was causing them to stop working. So we've been going around badgering anybody we see sticking their hand in the elevator, because that's what we were told. Now you're saying that isn't true,
So
as long as we stick it in far enough.
If there's an infrared detector.
Yeah,
So
I'm talking about 10 and 11.
Yeah.
Those are the ones that have been having the most consistent problems. And so we have been blamed for breaking them because we're trying to hold them open, but you're saying that's really not true.
So when we talk about holding them open, if you block the doors, right? If you hold the doors open and it goes into, they're designed to have a nudging feature that will say, get out of the way, and the buzzer will come on. I don't know if you've all experienced that. That nudging feature adds an additional force. And so that is most likely the community's concern if it happens.
That was not expressed clearly at all. It's that just don't try to open the door. So they put signs on, you know, to clarify where the hold open button is. But sometimes you get it, you're getting in the elevator. A few people get in, and I'm quick still, you know, for now. So I can get in there quickly, and I will try to grab the button because the door's starting to close, and nobody else knows what to do.
Yeah, we're in discussions right now. Again, like I'd mentioned, we're talking about adjustments of door times.
Yeah.
We need to really show the impact and study that a little bit of what's going to happen. With that study, let us put together a formal response on which of your elevators have the OptiGuards, which are the infrareds. And again, if we have different door protection devices on 11 different elevators, some may not be as modernized as others, that we'll come up with a standard that is safe for all of you, most importantly.
North Tower, sometimes when I get out, the door hits me, and I'm not that slow.
So when you get,
Yeah, when I'm getting out, the door closes on me.
okay, that's a timing issue. If,
I'm not that slow, I don't think.
probably not. And which tower was that?
North Tower.
North, okay. Make a little note of that. It sounds like doors and door time seems to be the primary issue here.
Could you?
There is another issue, and that is, I've been on the elevator on 10 or 11, most recently on 10, that pushing too many buttons, you know, a ton of people get on at one, pushing too many buttons results in everything shutting down.
It's called anti-nuisance, and that's it.
Anti-nuisance?
It's called anti-nuisance.
Now we're considered
And
a
that is-
nuisance, huh?
that is a technical term. I don't know if you ever saw the movie Elf, where he goes in and lights up all the buttons in New York, and it's like, guess what? If you start pushing too many buttons, the elevator has what we call load wane, and it senses how many people are in your elevator, right? Within reason. We usually, if it's a 3,000-pound elevator, it's not going to be 3,000 pounds inside the elevator. Usually the load wane's set at about 65% of that.
Right.
To compensate for maybe electric wheelchairs, things like that. So when you start lighting up more buttons than what the elevator perceives is adequate, it's going to blow out all of your lights and say, start fresh, you guys. Someone's not telling the truth here.
So that's a combination of load factor and this
anti-nuisance.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you. You're welcome.
Okay.
Load wane can be adjusted. It's a pretty complex adjustment with the community that we serve here because of wheelchairs, scooters, walkers. You're not going to be able to fit as many people. Yeah, right. You're not going to put as many people on an elevator in a retirement facility as you would a normal office building. Yeah, I would have to confirm what your load wane is set at, but. Mm-hmm. No, that isn't what I said. There's, you'll know, you can't put enough people on your elevator to overload it. What I said is if you have somebody pushing too many buttons.
Let's pretend that every person pushes a button, it shuts, and the elevator isn't full. So tell us how many people can get on the elevator.
So that would be an issue. So, no, which elevator? Do you know? I'm sorry. So his question is that there's too many people on the elevator and it shuts it down? Is that too many buttons get pushed? Well, it translates to people and how many buttons are pushed. So it depends on the load, right? Sure. Right.
I was saying I've seen that happen, but it doesn't stop the elevator. The elevator doesn't start when I've been in it and there are too many people in it and all the buttons are pushed. It just cancels out all the buttons and you've got to start again. And maybe not, some people may not be able to go to their floor until some people get off, I suppose. But I have seen that happen, but it hasn't stopped the elevator. It's just made you keep putting in the floors that you want to go to.
It wouldn't shut the elevator down. To your point, it would make you just re-enter your call button.
Do you have a plan for modernizing both elevators 10 and 11?
The plan right now is the next phase of their modernization is with elevators 1 through 5.
So 10 and 11 are just a huge
problem, and it's continual. And so my question is, can those elevators be replaced, upgraded? What needs to happen so that we all have a little more faith in the fact that they're going to work on a daily basis?
Well, again, we've been working with Horizon House with capital planning, and elevator 10, I know that we did door operators on 10. That's a huge, huge component. I'll have to look at what we can do, and I'll do a deep dive on the callbacks. We have information, all of the calls that are reported to Otis, we keep in what we call Otis line e-service reporting, and I can do an actual beacon report and look at all the calls and see where the troubles are coming from. I think the issues that we've seen most recently with 10 and 11 are not component per se as far as reliability. It's been adjustments. For instance, Taylor took this elevator out because he was not comfortable with the way it was adjusted and actually some load weighing. So maybe number 10, whomever, or 11 individuals that were experiencing some button failures, we can address that as well. But I'll do a deep dive for the Horizon House on that for you.
Could I return us for a moment over here, please, to the issue of door opening and closing? So as I understand it, there's nothing wrong with sticking your hand in and blocking the infrared light.
It's not on. It's not on. It's on. It's just...
Okay. So it is the case that if you stick your hand in, it'll open again. And that's not terrible for the elevator. But apparently, if you hold the door open, then the elevator stops working. Is that correct?
That is a true statement. If you hold the doors, block the doors, what happens, it'll send it into what we call nudging. And if you don't move out of the way and let the doors close, it'll shut itself down, because rather than wearing out the actual door operator, it's going to say something's blocking it. I'm going to have to shut it down until...
And then somebody has to come and readjust.
And then somebody has to come out and reset.
So how long does it have to be held open for that nudging to kick in?
I don't know. That's adjustable, and I'll have to get the answer to that. I don't know what your door times are set at present. A lot of times, they're, believe it or not, 6.5 seconds is standard in like an office building, but those times are usually adjusted for hospitals and retirement homes.
Okay. If you could
kind
get
of
us
a dumb question to
that
ask.
information would be helpful to us to know how long.
Yeah. It sounds to me, I'll do a deep dive on all the door times and door operation, and we'll put together with Brian a protocol of how safely to interrupt the door operation.
Excuse me. I have kind of a dumb question to ask. We've been here 2 years, and someone else has said that the elevators in the North Tower basically haven't been working since the beginning. So I have a question. A, should they be replaced? Because all these problems that are going on come when one elevator is down. People crowd in, they do all kinds of dumb things. And so, I mean, we've got all these explanations, but nothing is happening that's actually working. So, do the elevators need to be replaced?
Not at this time. Not on 1011.
Why aren't they consistently, they are consistently not working? It's, consider the liability issue. Can you imagine what would happen if there was a fire and people had to walk down from the 19th floor? There aren't enough stretchers. We would be sued into oblivion.
No, I understand your concerns.
And the public relations, the press would ruin this place, and that's us who live here. I think, and I know that the staff is here, that the residents who live here who are going through that really need to be of the first priority. I know there's issues for funding the West Tower, but these elevators need to be fixed and to work and not be off, You know, somebody was putting up a sign, thinking of putting this elevator operating temporarily. So it's very frustrating because
No.
I can't find out from you what you really think of these elevators.
Okay, so let me just tell you a life cycle on an elevator. A typical life cycle is 25 years. So when you're, 17, and the Horizon House is budgeting and capital planning for replacement of all their systems, but it comes in pieces, right? You know, in a perfect world, you'd go, we could do everything all at once. But they're planning based on the age of equipment and what we say is deemed unsafe or not as reliable as it should be. We've been working on getting the reliability back, and I hope that you've noticed some changes since we've come on. No, it's gotten worse? We're worse than your predecessor? Over a year. Yeah. I know.
That's.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
No.
So if one isn't working, people can go around the corner and take the other elevator.
Right, right.
North Tower, we have two elevators, and they have consistently, they'll fix one, and then the other one goes down. So for the past, I don't know, year and a half, we've had one elevator. I mean, it's just, and then we'll have two for about a week, and then it's down again. And my concern is, at some point, we're gonna have no elevators. They're both gonna
Right.
go down at the same time. So, and that's not far-fetched, because down the street at the Meridian condo, I lived there for 17 years, and we had two elevators, problems all the time, but after I moved out this past year, they had both elevators down. It's a 27-story building up and 5 levels down. They had both elevators down for 2.5 months. And that building is maybe, let's see, it opened in 2002, so it's 22 years old. So it's reaching
It's
that
reaching
25-year
reaching
point,
that
and
age,
and they're
right.
planning
And
on redoing
depending
them.
on
But
usage,
I'm
yeah.
worried about. I mean, they don't have a senior population, you know, so it wasn't as bad as if that happened here. If both our elevators go down.
Well, we continue to work with the team here in identifying. Like I said, we review the callbacks, we review what trends are happening, and we rely on our mechanics and technicians to identify any major components that require replacement. When we present that, Horizon House is not held back on making those repairs. So if there's continued issues with 10 and 11, we'll dig into it and we'll see what we can do to improve reliability. That's our primary goal here, is to make sure that we get your elevators up and running. Go ahead.
Oops, I'm
sorry.
He's pointing to the microphone. I think. She is, yes. Anyway, I think we're talking about a basic design flaw in the way the North Tower was built with just 2 elevators. And I am very sure that when the new tower is built, it will have more than 2 elevators. So that should solve that problem.
No, and that is that is the truth. Is typically, you know, we can't go back and design build the North Tower. It has 2 elevators in it. The only thing we can do is to figure out what improvements we can add, or if modernization is necessitated, get that pushed to the forefront on their capital planning budgets.
My other question, somebody else got the mic?
I do. You mentioned that there was an average life expectancy for an elevator,
Right.
and I was wondering about that has to do with the quality of the elevator. I lived in another building where they had 3 elevators, and we hardly ever had any problems. They are replacing them proactively because the elevators are 40 years old. So
Yikes.
what is specifically is the issue? Were these not of the same quality, not a good quality elevator, or for 10 and 11?
No, I would think as you can see, based on the tower, I think your building could have used a third elevator.
Yes,
they're
but
being used extensively, and I haven't done a run rate study on them. We used to put motor starts on and actually count how many motor starts there are, and could base some of the data off of that. We don't use that technology anymore, so. Yeah, we're going to have to. But when I say an average, if you talk to a consultant, a third-party consultant, they're going to use that 25-year marker. Okay. Now, things that may instigate it sooner is usage, how well it was maintained, and or technology. So some of the technology, if components become obsolete, that may push your modernization up quicker.
But what about the quality of the elevator? Is there a variation, or are they all the same great quality?
No,
that's what I was asking.
The quality with Otis is we have with all of our product lines, there isn't an A, B, and C quality. They're all the same quality.
So they're all the same elevator? They're not different?
No, there's different styles of elevators. We've got gearless, we've got geared, we've got hydraulic, we've got gens, we've got a different product for different applications, right? So a 2 or 3 story building typically doesn't use a traction elevator. They use a hydraulic. It's just more economical. The higher the speeds, the higher the rise, the more expensive the elevators get, and they're just designed, elevators are designed differently for capacity and speed, right? So there's a variation. But as far as quality's the same, within Otis anyway.
So what I'm hearing is...
I'm sorry, I'm losing track. Oh, there we go. Thanks.
What I'm hearing is, I think, that by consistently, for months at a time, having one elevator out in the North Tower, we're putting too much load on the single elevator and therefore wearing out whatever parts or whatever it is that wears out. And so we just bounce back and forth. I have an ancillary question there. We consistently hear, we're waiting for a part. We're waiting for a part. Don't you stockpile parts?
We don't stockpile parts.
Maybe you should.
We stockpile some components. The belts in those elevators, they're of the Gen 2 model. Those are specific to that elevator, so we can't stock them. Otherwise, we'd be stocking belts for thousands of elevators. It would just be unsurmountable. I mean, we don't have the facilities, nor do we have the business plan that would allow for that. We call the manufacturer, and unfortunately, belts do take 2 to 3 weeks typically to get here. Sometimes it's sooner. It just depends on the manufacturer. It's a third-tier company that we use. It's not Otis, but it's a vendor that we've hired to design and manufacture our belts. So we're relying on that as well, that supply chain.
At this point, I would like to hear a summary from you as to what you're going to do next in terms of our problem, particularly with 10 and 11. I haven't heard from you an acknowledgement of our frustration, of our concern, our fears, and so I want to make sure that you understand how it impacts our lives.
Oh, I certainly know how it impacts your lives. My father-in-law lived at Ida Culver for the last 30 years of his life, and elevators were a critical component to his mobility and safety moving in and out of that building. So
please give us a summary of just what the next steps are for you.
The next steps for me is I will work with the Horizon team. We will do a deep dive on elevators 10 and 11. They've already invested substantial repairs up front on elevator 10. When we came on, we will look and see what the actual calls have been and make recommendations. If it's purely maintenance, then it's on Otis's side. If it's components, then we need to design and figure out what's causing the situation. Unfortunately, you know, again, there's 2 elevators in that tower. I wish there were 3, but 2 elevators, when one goes down, I know how horribly impacted the property is, and I do sympathize with you.
What does a deep dive mean?
Well, we analyze the data from what has been reported on all the issues. We look at the calls, and you know, it may say it was a door operator failure. We'll look and see, well, what did the mechanic find out? What was the fault that caused the door operator? And then we can see if this was human error, was it a mechanical failure, was it something that can be prevented? And then I will work with the Horizon team to identify what our next steps are.
Thank you.
What's discouraging to me is you have elevator 10. Just for a second. I'll give it back to you. Okay. Is that you have elevator 10 and 2 items under investments and future plans. Within the last couple of weeks, elevator 10 was out, then elevator 11 was out, then elevator 10 was okay, elevator 11 is now out again. So we don't have much confidence that this report's inadequate, or at least not complete. I think the concern, because my wife and I and 10 other people were stuck in an elevator for almost an hour. An elevator that shook before it stopped shaking, whose doors wouldn't open, and we need to hear what's the risk level of, I don't know what's holding up the rest of the elevator when it's not working, but is that an independent system so that that system is very mechanical and doesn't fail? I mean, so far that's what it looks like. I think that's my major concern. When we get in a stuck elevator, what is you as an elevator professional, what should we and should we not do? And be direct and honest, and don't tell us, well, you shouldn't push this button or you shouldn't hold the elevator door open or something like that. What are the best things to do if we're stuck in the elevator and it's, whether it's shaking or not?
Yeah, if you're stuck in an elevator, and it's not moving, you've pushed a door open button, it's not responding. You've got to push the emergency button and call Otis line and remain calm. Our operators will stay on the line with you until, or the building, or to your front desk.
Well, that didn't happen when we were in the elevator. We were there for quite a while before we got somebody to tell us what to do.
No, they answered right away.
Otis elevator, yeah.
Front desk.
Right.
The front desk, yeah.
Right. Otis didn't.
but-
We don't know if Otis ever answered.
No, that would have to come from the front desk to relay that message. But again, if you're in a stuck elevator, there's ventilation. The elevator's not going to fall. Remain calm. And stay back from the doors, because when the technician does arrive, they don't want you prying on doors or doing anything that prevents him to, or her, to make sure that they can get to the problem as quickly as possible.
Finally, one more thing. We were told that it's kind of our fault because we hold the door open. We wait for somebody to come in, and as they're approaching and they're a few feet away, and we stand in front of the door so it doesn't close.
Yeah, holding the doors open is going to cause failures. So, no, I understand. So, and like I said, we're going to work on door times, and we're discussing that. We just have to manage both situations, right? If you extend your door times, there's ramifications on the rest of the building, right? So the door open, it's, no, when you say extending the door time, has nothing to do with the door open button. The extending the door time is the time that you're allowed when you hit that hall button, the car arrives, it's going to hold the doors, right? So let's say it's set at, we'll just use 20 seconds for an example. And you want to double that time. You want to make it 40 seconds so everybody can get on, or friends, family, whatever the situation is. That you've extended another 20 seconds, but now you've added exponentially delays throughout the rest of the building. So that is when you're building and designing a building. There's elevator analysis that are conducted to tell you exactly how many elevators you need, for instance, with how many people are going to be occupying each floor. So we'll look at that for you. We'll look at see what is the best solution for either using the door hold feature wholeheartedly, or if extending your actual hall call down. That's perfectly safe. That's perfectly safe. That's not going to hurt the elevator. No. Holding the doors will cause shutdowns. Yeah. Yeah. Depending on which door protection device you have on that particular elevator.
Becky and everybody, we're on a time, so a couple more questions for Becky, and then we'll close.
Becky?
Are you here? And then we'll come over there.
Becky, with respect to the two different kinds of sensor systems that are on the elevators, when you make the recommendation of what to do and what not to do, are you going to make it in terms of a sort of a lowest common denominator?
That's exactly what we do. You have to go to the lowest common denominator. The most non-ambulatory person, right, is the one that we're going to cater to.
Yeah,
so.
I was speaking of it technologically. In terms of minimizing risks of damage to the system, what the best practice is going to be, because I don't think most of us are going to be able to remember which elevators have which system and where we need to be cautious about A versus B.
Exactly, and that's why I'll work with this team, the Horizon team, to analyze and figure out what's the protocol is going to be. You're welcome.
Is there a rough estimate about when the modernization of elevators 1 through 5 will happen?
I think that we are possibly a year out, or I can't remember. It takes quite some time for Otis to obtain these parts that we need for 1 through 5. And then the amount of time an elevator's down, Becky, is it like 6 months or something per elevator?
Each unit will take about 14 to 16 weeks for installation once the material is on site. So, once the contract is you're looking at least a year out from now.
Yeah, so it's a year. Once we sign it and finalize it, it's a year for Otis to get all the material and get it's a different team that'll come and do that significant amount of work for us.
How different is that from, say, a contract that you would sign with an outside private commercial many-storied building?
Commercial's going to take a little longer than that, only because of typically the permit process. So it depends on, from the time a project starts, from design to boots on the ground actually installing an elevator. Once we get the equipment, very similar downtime. And it's all dependent on how many stops, right? So if it's a 22-stop elevator, it's going to take longer than if it's a 11-stop, for instance. It may be 12 weeks. So 12 to 16 weeks is a pretty average for a traction installation.
Another thing that, unless you just put new belts on 10, right? I mean, that was something that Otis got that accomplished sooner than we, initially we thought it would take longer. They got it done a little sooner for us. And so any last questions for Becky? Sean, right by you there.
This past weekend, I was going to go downstairs, pick up the mail or something, and all 5 elevators, 1 through 5, were out with this sound like the giant, whatever that thing is you use to dry carpets and stuff. And the fire department came. What causes that?
So
I mean, in the event of an emergency, somebody's going to die because they can't run EMTs up 18 floors.
So what sounds like is that your elevators did what they were supposed to do. If a fire signal is set off, either a smoke or heat detector, your elevators have what's called Fire Service Phase 1, which initiates those elevators all to come down to a designated landing. It's usually the lobby. If you see inside your elevator, there's usually a star on one of the buttons. That actually indicates the fire floor. Most people think it's just a designation for lobby, but it's actually the recall floor. So in an event, signals triggered, elevators are recalled to that fire floor. Unless the fire or smoke alarm's on that floor, then it goes to an alternate floor. And then it is not reset, those elevators are not reset until the fire department clears the fire panel. So.
And to add on that, Becky, outside of those elevators, there's a key box where the first responders can open that, and they can take a key to override this elevator to be able to take it to the floor they need to confirm if we have a false alarm or whatever they need to respond to. So that is exactly what they're supposed to do. Describe. Right. Those are the fans you're hearing, absolutely, is exactly what's supposed to happen. So I apologize for the inconvenience. The system did what it was supposed to do.
How long does the response take? I mean, in the event of an emergency, somebody could die in the amount of time it takes them to get up 18 floors.
Well, when it goes into a fire mode, like Brian mentioned, is that the fire department they'll look at the fire panel and determine where that sensor was, right? Now, they have control over the elevators. They put it on what's called Phase 2 fire service, where they have complete control of the elevator. They'll capture one of the cars, ride it up, and on Phase 2, there's a feature, it's called peekaboo. So they can crack the doors a little bit and see if the fire is there. If not, then they can release the doors completely to investigate the situation. But no, fire service is, your building is designed by code to have Phase 1 and Phase 2. Sounds like it did exactly what it was supposed to do. And again, in the event of a real fire, the firefighters will start either evacuation by capturing those cars. They have the ability. You don't get to use them, but they'll rescue you by they're using.
And the response time is usually at the longest for this building is 8 to 10 minutes at the longest for fire department. Sean, isn't that what you've seen? 8 minutes. If that, they're
not faster.
Yeah, they get here very fast, and so they're responding to our alarm system. So. Thank you very much. Dick Cole's very last one, because we're running over. Thank you.
Thank you for all this, but it's not terribly reassuring. What you've told us is that when the North Tower was built and designed, it was under-designed with respect to elevators. I'm sure we would all agree with that. But you've also said that some of the parts are too hard to get and they take too long, and so they're not stocked. This is the typical situation where a really good preventive maintenance program should be put in place. We only have 2 elevators. We can't afford to have one go down, and we certainly can't afford to wait a month or 2 months for parts. So why don't you put your heads together? Just don't do a deep dive. Solve the problem. Get some parts on hand. We know that the belts are wearing parts. Have spare belts somewhere in the system. Horizon House will have to pay for them, but for God's sakes, have them.
Thank you, Dick. Appreciate that. We'll take a look at that. And Absolutely, we have invested with Otis and made a partnership, and I know today you may not feel like, gosh, 10 and 11 are functioning so much better because one of them's down and 10 was down. And it is true, they are custom belts based on the length of the hoist and what is needed for the building itself. And we'll evaluate if there are some parts that are reasonable to stock. It's not a common practice anymore like it was many, many years ago. That doesn't mean we won't evaluate it. Doesn't mean we won't look at it and continue to invest in what is needed. The elevators aren't going away, so some of those parts we may need. And we did invest quite a bit, and Otis has made great leaps over their predecessor, and we really appreciate it. And we have a plan for us to get 1 and 5 modernized. It's an investment that we've already made in some, and we'll continue to look at 10 and 11. And I appreciate you guys coming. The residents wanted to hear from you. They were eager to hear from you. You can tell they get frustrated. And Becky understands. That's why she came to talk to you. So thank you very much.
All right, thank you.